In the cold winter, an old man named Ji Hong still sat stubbornly by the public mailbox. The security guard, Zhang Guan, asked him not to come to the construction site every day. He heard the old man was waiting for a letter, but the mailbox hadn't been used in a long time. Old man Hong shooed away the guard, then carefully brushed the snow off the mailbox. Just then, his daughter, Yunnan, ran up and pulled her father home. She needed his ID to book a train ticket, but old man Hong refused to give it. Yunnan begged her father to come to Beijing because she couldn't come back to the countryside every day to take care of him. Old man Hong quickly took his medicine, but Yunnan said, "It's no use. Who are you waiting for a letter from, anyway?" Old man Hong hugged his pile of medicine and went into his room, promising to take good care of himself. The next morning, old man Hong left a letter. "I don't want to go to Beijing, and I don't want to implicate my daughter." Going to the construction site to find her father, Yunnan met the security guard, Zhang Guan. He recounted, "Last night, old man Hong rushed in to send a letter, but in just a flash, he mysteriously disappeared. A cat suddenly appeared, and then the mailbox suddenly chimed. Zhang Guan opened it, but didn't see the letter old man Hong had just put in. Yunnan didn't believe it, but unexpectedly, the cat standing on the mailbox made her heart skip a beat. Zhang Guan affirmed, "It's the same cat from last night." Just then, the mailbox chimed again. Yunnan approached and opened the mailbox door. Unexpectedly, there really was a reply letter. The letter was sent by a girl named Hai Tang from 1991. "In my lone town in 1991, a group of debt collectors received a task. They broke into a dilapidated house and only saw a girl named Hai Tang worshiping her grandmother. The leader, Cha Dong, asked, 'Hai Tang's father isn't coming back to mourn his old mother?' He handed her a promissory note for 1,000 yuan from Hai Tang's father. But she said, 'I don't have any money. Tell the debt collectors to find my father.' Cha Dong had no choice but to have his subordinates repossess items as collateral. His subordinate, Ah Hao, found 100 yuan in the bedroom. Hai Tang begged them, 'Put it back, because that's money for my grandmother's funeral.' Cha Dong respected the deceased, so he only temporarily took 100 yuan. Hai Tang picked up a brick to throw, but was stopped by his subordinate, Yi Sun. He advised her, 'Don't do anything stupid, because our group is just following orders.' Going to collect debt from a production warehouse, Cha Dong showed no mercy. However, the warehouse owner called his bodyguards. The owner arrogantly let his subordinates show off their power. Cha Dong sighed, because I just wanted to collect the debt peacefully. His two subordinates, seeing their boss make a move, immediately fought back. Back at the billiards hall, Cha Dong told Yi Sun, 'Take a good shower so you could be an exemplary student tomorrow.' Yi Sun respected his boss, who was flirting with the new teacher, and obediently complied. But Cha Dong thought, 'Later, when we do big business, we also need someone who knows how to use computers.' He gave his subordinates spending money, telling them to be frugal. Yi Sun took the money to the attic, carefully storing it in a small wooden box. Meanwhile, Cha Dong went to report on his work to his boss, Ing Bao. He said, 'The first family had a funeral, so we didn't repossess anything.' Ing Bao ordered In Chong to take over that debt collection from Cha Dong. He reminded Cha Dong, 'Don't get cocky just because you have subordinates who can fight.' On his first day of school, Yi Sun was late. The teacher, Tan Xin, reminded him, 'Don't waste this opportunity to study. Last year, Yi Sun dropped out. This year, you must focus on finishing 12th grade. If you don't get into university, at least you'll have a high school diploma.' She entered the classroom and introduced Yi Sun to his new classmates. Unexpectedly, fate had it that he was in the same class as his debtor, and Hai Tang was even exemplary class president. Waiting for Yi Sun at the school gate, Hai Tang demanded the money for her grandmother's funeral. He thought, her father borrowed money, so of course he has to pay it back. But Hai Tang threatened, 'I'll report to the school about Yi Sun collecting debt.' Coincidentally seeing her best friend pass by, Hai Tang temporarily let Yi Sun off the hook. Working part-time at the bookstore, Hai Tang received her monthly salary. The owner remembered just receiving a batch of postcards, so he asked her to organize an activity for people to write letters to themselves. Hai Tang went outside to draw an advertising board. Just then, an old man came by, asking for an old cardboard box. She originally intended to sell it for money, but kindly gave it to the old man. She saw him also carrying a mailbox with a cute cat, so she pushed his cart for a bit. After a day of fighting, Cha Dong calculated he would soon be able to buy a boat. We'll hand over the debt collection work to Ing Bao to earn some decent money. Yi Sun remembered, under Ing Bao, there are also a few people who go on boats. But Cha Dong thought, the sea doesn't belong to anyone. The next day, a mailbox appeared next to the bookstore. The owner also saw a letter addressed to Hai Tang. She recognized the mailbox as identical to the one on the old man's cart yesterday afternoon. Hai Tang opened the letter, her face suddenly turning pale. In class, Hai Tang collected funds for the teacher. She took the opportunity to call Yi Sun outside to talk. Hai Tang warned Yi Sun, "Don't casually bully me. If you send any more letters, I'll report you to the police. In class, a friend named Xiao Qi arbitrarily opened Haitang's bag to get his math notebook. He discovered a letter and read it aloud to the whole class. It contained sappy, sentimental words, and the sender was Yi-sun. Haitang rushed in to demand the letter, but Xiao Qi read even louder. Yi-sun entered the classroom, kicked Xiao Qi off his chair, and snatched the letter. Haitang quickly snatched it back and crumpled it up. Just then, the teacher entered and invited the two students to the office. Yi-sun affirmed, "I didn't write any love letters to anyone." Tan Xin reminded him, "Remember to come to school to study, not to do such nonsense." Yi-sun admitted the handwriting was very similar to his, but he really didn't write this letter, so he refused to admit guilt or write a self-criticism. Waiting for school to end, Yi-sun warned Xiao Qi, "If you play tricks, you'll definitely lose an arm." Just then, the teacher brought Haitang's father to talk to the sender of the letter. His name was Yi-bo. He blamed his daughter for making him worry. He admitted, "I was busy with work, so I neglected to teach Haitang. I apologized to the school, and I apologized to the children." Yi-sun sneered, "I never expected someone could be so hypocritical." He waited for everyone to leave the office, then picked up the crumpled letter. But in Tang, we both crawled out of the mud. You and I both understand how lowly our lives are. I wanted to help you escape endless pain, but unexpectedly opened up another abyss. But in Tang, the abyss is even scarier than the mud, because devils lurk within it. Yet we cannot choose, nor can we change. I wanted to help you find freedom, but I'm no better off myself. Indeed, Yi-bo's true colors only showed when he was at home. He took all of Haitang's meager part-time wages and even the class fund money from her bag. She could endure hunger, but she couldn't replace the class fund money. But her hopeless resistance couldn't save a single penny. In the stifling room, Haitang wanted to join her grandmother in the afterlife because she was too desperate and would never be able to escape my lone town. She had no regrets, except not seeing her mother again. She hoped her mother would read this letter and forgive her weakness. If she could live again, she hoped she would have a chance to choose. At the gambling den, Haitang had lost all reason. She held a knife and advanced towards Yi-bo, but Yi-sun stopped her in time. He reminded her, "Any more reckless actions will ruin your entire life." However, Haitang had nothing left to lose. She questioned him, "Why are you stopping me? I can't go on living anymore. Why can't I just die with him?" Yi-sun thought Yi-bo wasn't worth her sacrificing her life for. "Haitang, who can this dull knife kill? If you stab Yi-bo, at most it'll just leave a scar on him, but you'll rot in prison." Just then, the police arrived and invited the two to the station. Yi-bo told the police that his daughter suffered from paranoia. He didn't put her in a mental hospital because Haitang only had occasional episodes. She angrily rushed forward again to hit Yi-bo. But in front of the police, he played the role of a good father perfectly. Yi-sun had no choice but to cover Haitang's mouth and ask permission to take his classmate home first. However, on the way back, Haitang didn't want Yi-sun to interfere in her affairs. He thought, "If I didn't cover Haitang's mouth, I definitely couldn't get her out of the police station." But Haitang was still determined to die with Yi-bo. "Yi-sun, you don't know anything." "Haitang, I know what kind of person Yi-bo is, and I know how much you've suffered. I don't want to get involved in other people's business. I just feel regret because, unlike me, you can actually pass the college entrance exam and leave this place." "Yi-sun, my father took all the class fund money. I can't replace it, and I can't face going to school anymore." Yi-sun agreed to help Haitang get back the class fund money. If he couldn't, she could just blame him for stealing the money. Haitang cried and obediently went home. Yi-sun found cigarette butts outside the gate and guessed that old Bao's subordinates had come to collect debt. He pulled Haitang away, but she wasn't afraid of them. Yi-sun said that old Bao wasn't like his boss. If Haitang was caught by them, she would definitely suffer more than death. He pulled her, running, but still bumped into two of old Bao's subordinates. Yi-sun had to hide Haitang somewhere, then diverted their attention. After escaping, Yi-sun returned to pick up Haitang. He saw she had no other refuge, so he took her back to his attic. He saw her body covered in injuries, already guessing part of Yi-bo's depravity. Haitang recounted, "My family moved from another place, so I have no relatives. I reported to the police, but I was deemed mentally ill. I've been struggling to survive each day to pass the college entrance exam and leave this place." Yi-sun promised to handle the class fund matter and explain the love letter situation. He told her to stay while he went out. He went to the convenience store to buy some personal items, telling her to rest early. At the billiard hall, Yi-sun caught an house secretly peeking at the owner of the record store upstairs, whose name was Junju. Despite her physical disability, she was still like a bright moon in the eyes of her admirer. And Hao told Yi-sun to wait and watch the tape while he went to buy a bowl of vermicelli for Junju. He coincidentally met old Bao's subordinates and eagerly invited them to eat vermicelli. However, they gossiped about Junju, wondering what it would be like to play with a disabled person. They knew and Hao liked Junju, yet they continued to insult her in front of him. And Hao lost control and lunged to teach them a lesson, but he couldn't fight off all of Old Bao's subordinates. Yi-sun returned to the attic early in the morning, but Hai Tang wasn't there, nor had she touched the personal items on the table. Yi-sun went to class, but didn't see Hai Tang. It turned out she went to the teacher's office to ask to make up for the class fund. After Hai Tang returned to class, she saw Yi-sun scolding his friends for gossiping about her family. Just then, her best friend rushed in to report that Yi-bo was making a scene in the hallway downstairs. He blamed the teacher for not teaching properly, which made Yi-sun incite his daughter to misbehave. Yi-bo saw Hai Tang and immediately questioned, "Did you sleep with your classmate last night?" Yi-sun couldn't take it anymore and punched the despicable man directly in the face. Yi-bo threatened to call the police to cleverly extort money. The principal met Yi-sun privately. Miston asked him if he wanted to drop out. Yi-sun affirmed, "I didn't write any love letters, and I don't need a school that tolerates bad people." Tan Xin watched Yi-sun grow up in the orphanage, always following Cha Dong to fight. She did her best to get Yi-sun a chance to go to school, but he didn't try at all. Yi-sun apologized for disappointing Tan Xin. He made up for Hai Tang's class fund and didn't regret hitting Yi-bo. Tan Xin, disappointed, decided to suspend Yi-sun. Meeting the teacher, Hai Tang begged the school not to expel Yi-sun. He only wanted to help her, so he shouldn't be wronged. Tan Xin asked her student not to cause trouble, because the school had difficulty not pursuing Hai Tang's responsibility. Yi-sun was only temporarily suspended, so don't challenge the principal's limits anymore. Waiting for Yi-sun to return, Cha Dong questioned his subordinate for getting involved in others' affairs. Yi-sun only felt pity for Hai Tang, and moreover, her father still owed money to Old Bao. Cha Dong punched Yi-sun to make him sober. He reminded his subordinate, "We collect debt for hire, we don't play heroes. If you still want to survive in my loan, don't mess with Old Bao." Meeting Hai Tang, Yi-sun told her, "Don't worry about me." Hai Tang gave all her savings to Yi-sun, promising to pay the remaining amount next month. Yi-sun accepted it and also returned the 100 yuan that was for Hai Tang's grandmother's funeral. He gave her his contact address, telling her she could find him no matter what difficulty she encountered. An indescribable emotion suddenly sparked in Hai Tang's heart, because for the first time, someone wanted to protect her. The rare, peaceful moment allowed her to eat a sweet cup of dessert with peace of mind next to Yi-sun. Returning to the attic, Yi-sun finished pasting the remaining half of the letter. "And Tang, I still won't try to pull you out of the abyss. Back then, we both lived difficult lives. I collected debts every day, and you always lived in fear. You once compared us to roadside weeds. Despite the hardships, I really miss all of that energy because that was the most beautiful moment of my life." In 2026, Yunin went to the police station to report her father missing. After checking his ID number, the police reported that her father had died in prison 25 years ago. Yunin thought the system made a mistake because the person in the photo wasn't her father, and her father had raised her from childhood and was still healthy at home last night. The police urged Yunin to find documents to prove her father's identity. She searched the entire house and found an old iron box, which contained many train tickets to Shui Street and a postcard with Hai Tang's name. Yunin realized the handwriting was identical to the strange letter from last night. She looked it up online and discovered that my lone town was later renamed Shui Street. At the Shui Street police station, Yunin inquired about Hai Tang. The police could not reveal information because Yunan was not a direct relative. After Yunan left, a man named Shun Sheng came to report his mother missing. She left home 2 days ago and parked her car in the lot below the mountain. The police discovered the victim was formerly named Hai Tang. He said earlier a girl also came looking for Mrs. Tang. Shun Sheng quickly chased after her, questioning Yunan. "Do you know Hai Tang?" He heard Yunan claim to be related to his mother, so he took her back to the police station. Yunan explained that her father received a letter from Hai Tang and recently he went missing, so she was inquiring about Mrs. Tang. The police realized that the two old people went missing on the same day, so they guessed they went to deal with private matters. Taking Yunan home, Shun Sheng recounted that he lived abroad with his father. He came back to bring his mother for medical treatment, only to find she wasn't home. Yunan entered Hai Tang's room and discovered she had an iron box identical to her father's. Shun Sheng didn't fully trust Yunan, so he decided to follow her back to Beijing. In 1991, Hai Tang remembered the desperate letter she wrote to her future self. She opened the mailbox to retrieve it, but couldn't find it. Hai Tang worriedly called Yi-sun. Just then, Old Bao arrived to settle the score, so Yi-sun couldn't answer the phone. Unexpectedly, Yi-bo came and pulled his daughter home. He knelt before his old mother's memorial tablet, lamenting, "I married a wife who ran off with another man, and now my daughter, listening to a hooligan, even plans to kill her father." He said it wasn't easy raising his child and taking his mother to the hospital, so Yi-bo intended to sell the house to pay off debts. Hai Tang quickly hugged her grandmother's ashes, not letting her father touch them. She pushed Yi-bo, unfortunately breaking her grandmother's photo. He was just waiting for a reason to punish his daughter. Meanwhile, Old Bao sent another group of thugs to retaliate against Cha Dong. They smashed things, but Cha Dong wouldn't let Yi-sun fight back. He hugged Yi-sun to protect his subordinate's safety. Going to find Yi-sun, Hai-Tang saw bloodstains on the doorknob. Worried, she frantically knocked on the door, calling for him. Yi-sun, standing right behind her, said he had just gone out to buy food. Hai-Tang recounted that she had just passed by the billiard hall and saw it was in disarray inside. She was afraid something had happened to Yi-sun, so she came to check on him. Hai-Tang saw Yi-sun covered in injuries and urged him to go inside and apply medicine. Under the yellow light, Yi-sun secretly looked at Hai-Tang's face. He only looked away when she caught him. He noticed many new wounds on her hand. Hai-Tang, I'm sorry. Hai-Tang told Yi-sun to keep his wounds dry, then excused herself to leave first. However, Yi-sun couldn't swallow his anger, so he went to the gambling den to find Yi-Bo. He exposed him for habitually owing money and not paying, and now being Old Bao's prey. Yi-Bo, if you dare to touch Hai-Tang again, I will definitely deal with you personally. After Yi-sun left, a group of thugs came to collect debt from Yi-Bo. Early in the morning, Yi-sun brought buns for Hai-Tang in the rain. She didn't eat them, only urged him to go rest and recover from his injuries. Yi-sun also brought a bottle of anti-inflammatory medicine to soothe her scratches. He guessed she had called him at the billiard hall last night. He was busy, so he didn't answer, but there would definitely be no next time. Hai-Tang recounted that before she wanted to die with Yi-Bo, she had written a suicide note. She held the key to the mailbox next to the bookstore, but for some reason, her letter had disappeared. Yi-sun asked Hai-Tang to meet him after school to clarify everything, meeting his boss, and how blamed himself for causing trouble with Old Bao subordinates, ruining the billiard hall, and also losing the money to buy a boat. Yi-sun promised to earn the money back for his boss. Cha Dong only hoped Yi-sun would continue his studies. Meeting Yi-sun in front of the mailbox, Hai-Tang said someone had discarded it there. The owner wanted to organize a new letter-writing activity, but the program was for selling postcards, not sending real letters. Yi-sun saw the mailbox was very sturdy and didn't know who used his name to write a love letter to Hai-Tang. Waiting until night, Yi-sun told Hai-Tang to send an empty letter. They hid in the alley opposite to wait for the culprit. But by midnight, no one had come near the mailbox. Hai-Tang fell asleep on Yi-sun's shoulder, making him a little nervous. He tried to stay calm and focus on observing the mailbox. Hai-Tang woke up and suggested checking tomorrow. Yi-sun urged Hai-Tang to go home first, so she could go to school tomorrow. But she was worried about Yi-sun's injuries and insisted he go home to rest. Early the next morning, Hai-Tang knew Yi-sun's leg hurt, so she brought him buns. Yi-sun asked Hai-Tang to meet him after school again to catch the culprit. However, 3 days later, no one came to retrieve the letter. Yi-sun remembered Hai-Tang didn't like buns, so he prepared pastries for her. Hai-Tang guessed Yi-sun had never eaten them, so she shared half with him. She read the love letter, feeling that it was written with genuine emotion, and moreover, it was written on stationery bought at the bookstore. Hai-Tang guessed she might know the writer. Yi-sun was uneasy. He was determined to catch the culprit. He saw Hai-Tang shivering and gave her his jacket, making an excuse that he fought all day, so he was very robust. Hai-Tang wondered, why was Yi-sun living with Cha Dong? He recounted that he came from an orphanage. When he was 16, he went out to earn a living. If Cha Dong hadn't taken him in, he probably would have starved to death on the streets. Hai-Tang urged Yi-sun to go home and rest, wait for his injuries to heal, and then go back to school. Furthermore, he should get a haircut to look more like a student. Yi-sun listened to everything she said. In 2026, Yunnan took Shun Chung to the construction site. Zhang Guan confirmed that he personally witnessed Yunnan's father and the letter disappear. Then, Yunnan searched for her father and suddenly received a letter sent from 1991. Shen Qing found it very illogical because an invisible person couldn't take Yunnan's father's letter and put another letter in, just as the cat suddenly appeared. Zhang Guan quickly threw the letter into the mailbox. In 1991, Yi-sun heard a rustling sound in the mailbox. He unlocked it and unexpectedly found a new letter. He put the mailbox down to check, but found no trap. Hai-Tang realized this was her suicide note. She guessed the mailbox could automatically send and receive letters, but other people's letters remained untouched. Could the mailbox only be for them? Yi-sun discovered that both the love letter and the suicide note used stationery with an anchor pattern at the top. Hai-Tang couldn't find any similar paper, so she tried replying on the back of the suicide note. She wrote her name, Hai-Tang, and asked who wrote the love letter to her, but after waiting a long time, the mailbox still made no sound. Hai-Tang guessed that the condition for exchanging letters had to be at exactly 12 a.m. and with a cat passing by. The next night, Hai-Tang waited until exactly 12 a.m. to send the letter. Sure enough, there was a rustling sound, and then the letter was gone. In 2026, Shun Chung didn't believe the letter from last night had suddenly disappeared. He wanted to verify it by sending many items along with a blank piece of paper. After 12 a.m., Shunsheng saw the items were still there and was sure Yu Nen was playing a trick. Unexpectedly, among the items, there was indeed a reply letter. "Hello, stranger. My name is Haitang. Did I receive the love letter you wrote?" The letter I wrote also suddenly disappeared, then reappeared at exactly 12 a.m. last night. If you received this, please send a letter back to me. Shunsheng couldn't believe the absurdity that the mailbox could automatically connect space and time. In 1991, Yi-sun decided to apologize to the teacher. He admitted he was too impulsive and didn't cherish his opportunity to study. Tan Xin told Yi-sun to go first so she could talk to the principal. Yi-sun asked her to visit his boss once. Meeting Cha Dong, Tan Xin questioned if he intended to be confined to a dilapidated billiard hall for the rest of his life. "You have hands, feet, and a brain. Why do you have to lead a bunch of thugs causing trouble everywhere?" Cha Dong admitted he was useless and couldn't protect his subordinates. Entering the billiard hall, he asked her if she came to mock or teach him. Tan Xin said that things could be fixed, seriously injured people could be treated, lost money could be earned back. But if Cha Dong just hid in a corner, he wouldn't accomplish anything. She gave him some money to renovate the billiard hall, making it better than before, because in her eyes, Cha Dong would never give up on himself just because of a beating. Calling his two subordinates back, Cha Dong blamed himself for not being able to protect everyone. However, Old Bao was very cruel, so it was good to turn against him early. Cha Dong planned to clean up the billiard hall to continue earning money, and once he bought a boat, he would definitely have the capital to fight Old Bao. Meanwhile, Haitang heard a cat meow and ran out to open the mailbox. She never expected a reply letter to actually appear. Haitang went to find Yi-sun to read the letter with him. "Hello, Haitang. I have received your letter. I discovered that only this type of paper can be sent through the mailbox. I am living in 2026. I read news that on the afternoon of September 23rd, 1991, a waterspout miracle appeared at the My Lone Town Harbor. If you're truly living in 1991, you can verify this. Additionally, my father, Ji Hong, is the sender of the love letter to you." Haitang was a little confused because she didn't know anyone named Ji Hong. She thought if a waterspout miracle occurred on the 23rd, then the mailbox truly connected to the future. Returning home, Yi-sun carefully studied the love letter. He decided to copy it and then ran to ask Haitang. She saw the identical handwriting and guessed it was written by the same person. Yi-sun revealed that he had just copied the love letter. He was used to writing round circles for her, but unexpectedly, Ji Hong also wrote exactly the same way. Haitang thought Ji Hong was Yi-sun in the future. "Haitang, if the mailbox can connect space and time, perhaps my future self wrote a love letter to you." Both suddenly became flustered, not daring to look directly into each other's eyes. Haitang thought everything started when the mailbox appeared. She recounted that an old man collecting scrap metal carried a mailbox past the bookstore. Yi-sun suddenly remembered seeing him pass by Haitang's house. They immediately went to the only scrap yard in town, but the owner affirmed he didn't hire anyone elderly. Haitang felt this was miraculous. If Yunan truly knew the future, she wanted to ask if she would get into university. Visiting the billiard hall, Tan Xin made Yi-sun promise two conditions. First, at school, he had to study diligently. Haitang would tutor Yi-sun in knowledge. Second, he absolutely wouldn't fight outside of school. Yi-sun agreed, as long as he could return to school. To make Yi-sun look more like a student, Haitang cut his hair herself. Yi-sun was flustered, trying to suppress the flutter in his heart. Haitang told him to study hard, not to fight with Xiao Qi and his friends anymore. She asked him if he wanted to go to university or had thought about his future life yet. Yi-sun chuckled, because he lived day by day, and when he was little, he was starved. So as long as he had food, he was content. Haitang advised Yi-sun not to be so resigned. "Yi-sun, let's get into university together and leave this town." Looking in the mirror, Yi-sun didn't recognize himself. Haitang wanted to ask you, Nan, if they would get into the same university. Yi-sun thought that was impossible. At the front door of the house, Haitang gave Yi-sun a letter. Yi-sun hoped they both would have the courage to roam across mountains, rivers, and seas, and be lucky enough to see the aurora borealis. Yi-sun smiled happily, unaware that Haitang was in trouble inside the house. The next day, Yi-sun waited for Haitang to go to school, but Yi-bo, who had just returned, locked her in her room. Yi-sun went to class but didn't see Haitang. He went to ask Ms. Tan and learned that Yi-bo had asked for his daughter to take a few days off due to illness. Yi-sun flew to Haitang's house, but only found the room in disarray. He ran to the gambling den but didn't see Yi-bo either. Yi-sun had no choice but to report to the police. Someone recognized Yi-sun and asked if Haitang's father had gotten her a psychological evaluation. Yi-sun remembered Yi-bo mentioning a mental hospital, so he borrowed a car and sped there. Sure enough, Yi-bo had taken his daughter to a mental hospital to facilitate selling the house. Yi-sun arrived in time and rushed forward to hit the father, who was worse than a beast. He didn't understand what Hai Tang had done wrong to be treated like this. Ibo asked passersby to intervene to escape Isun's fury. He supported Hai Tang and apologized for being late. She burst into sobs, hugging Isun tightly. "Hai Tang, I'm taking you home." They passed through a lush green field, but their moods didn't lighten. Isun took Hai Tang back to his house to apply medicine to her. Hai Tang recounted that Ibo hated her mother for being promiscuous, so he vented his anger on his daughter. But her mother wasn't like that. He himself suffered from jealousy. Later, Ibo gambled, and whenever he lost, he would come home and vent his anger on his wife. Hai Tang's mother couldn't take it anymore and left home. Since then, Hai Tang had to endure the beatings in her mother's place. In front of everyone, Ibo raised a small child and cared for an old mother. He even saved a few people in a factory fire, so he was considered a kind person. He spread rumors that he wouldn't marry again for fear that his stepmother would treat his child badly. So when Hai Tang said Ibo was a bad person, no one believed her. They even thought she was delusional and always tried to resist her father. Isun recounted that when he was 4 years old, his mother said she was going to find his father and never came back. He almost starved to death, having to scavenge for food in trash cans. His parents left him nothing, not even a name. Later, Annie Fat at the orphanage called him Isun. Annie Fat was Teacher Tan's mother and always urged Isun to study hard. But no matter how much Isun tried, he was still looked down upon by his friends as an illegitimate child. "Hai Tang, compared to me, you should live a much better life. Isun, thank you for helping me live on. Hai Tang, when I saw you anxiously kicking the door, I thought that's what it felt like to have family. So if you don't mind, I'll be your family. Hai Tang, let's live on together." The next day, Hai Tang and Isun went to school together. They both studied hard, waiting for a better future. Isun taught Hai Tang to ride a bicycle, and they rode to the big sea together. They were like the only sunlight appearing in each other's dark lives. They believed that from now on, with each other, they were no longer alone. Finally, September 23rd arrived. The two went to the pier to verify the letter predicting the future, but it was getting dark, and they still hadn't seen the waterspout miracle. They weren't surprised, because how could a mailbox connect space and time? Unexpectedly, just as they finished speaking, a stream of light shone down from above. The waterspout miracle truly appeared on the afternoon of September 23rd. Returning to the bookstore, Hai Tang immediately wrote a letter to Yunnan. She said she received a love letter, but didn't know anyone named Ji Hong. Shun Chung affirmed that the mailbox connected two different timelines. This time, he would write a reply letter to confirm that Hai Tang for 1991 was his mother. As soon as Shun Chung sent the letter, he received a call from the Shui Street Police. They had recovered his mother's body from the lake under the mountain, speculating that there was a man in the passenger seat of the car. Shun Chung believed that Yunnan's father was the culprit. Yunnan was certain her father wouldn't harm anyone. "Father, Hai Tang is in trouble. Where are you? What exactly happened?" Just then, the police captain, Wang Ming, invited Yunnan to cooperate with the investigation. He asked if the person in the passenger seat was her father. Yunnan denied it, because her father didn't wear similar clothes, and furthermore, her father had never mentioned Hai Tang. Wang Ming said that Ji Hong had indeed died in prison 25 years ago. The person she called father was only impersonating Ji Hong. In 1991, Isun took Hai Tang home. She saw a group of thugs cleaning out her house and quickly ran in to stop them. The leader said Ibo owed money and had mortgaged the house to him. Isun asked him if he was taking the house based on a torn piece of paper. The thug threatened Hai Tang not to make trouble if she couldn't pay the debt. Isun asked to go in and retrieve some belongings to get a knife to chase the thugs away. He said Ibo didn't own the house, and if anyone wanted to take it, they would have to step over his dead body. The thug, seeing Isun's reckless youth, told his subordinates to retreat for now. Isun stayed to help Hai Tang rearrange her belongings. She said she didn't need the house anymore because she didn't want to see him risk his life against thugs every time. She knew that if she still held the house deeds, Ibo wouldn't stop. "Hai Tang, as long as I'm alive, no one will be able to take your grandmother's house. But Isun, you're more important than the house." Isun's eyes welled up with tears. He never expected there was someone in this world who considered him more important than everything else. Calling Ibo back, Hai Tang made him sign a document severing their father-daughter relationship. In return, she would give him the house. Ibo only wanted the house deeds and didn't necessarily want to cut ties with his only relative. Hai Tang reminded him that if Ibo didn't pay his debts, he would die. If he didn't sign, she wouldn't hand over the land deeds, even if she died. Finally, Hai Tang was free. She only took her grandmother's ashes and her books. Nothing else mattered. "Hai Tang, let's go home." Hai Tang placed her grandmother on a small table. She announced that from now on, she was no longer alone. She would study hard and definitely get into university. Isun promised her grandmother to protect Hai Tang well. Isun went outside to give Hai Tang his bed. "Isun, let's buy another bed tomorrow, okay? Isun, I have a home now." The next day in class, Hai Tang received a collective petition. She told Yi-sun not to worry because she could handle this herself. Hai Tang questioned them. On what ground are you demanding Yi-sun's expulsion? Who here has seen Yi-sun hit a classmate? Who has personally witnessed him harassing a girl? Whose grades have dropped because of Yi-sun? If no one admitted it, it meant everyone could distinguish right from wrong. We can't make a student leave school just because they're not doing well in academics. Hai Tang will tutor Yi-sun to help him catch up. Hai Tang asserted that Xiao Qi was the one affecting other students. She warned him that if he continued his hooligan behavior, he shouldn't expect to continue his studies. After school, Yi-sun asked him how to go shopping for women's clothing. He said Hai Tang didn't have any clothes, so he wanted to buy her a few outfits. And Hao told Yi-sun to hang them up to create a romantic surprise for Hai Tang. Yi-sun looked for a long time, but couldn't feel any romance. He was about to take them down when Hai Tang returned. She looked at the feminine dresses, too moved to speak. Yi-sun shyly went outside, smiling brightly. He saw her wearing the pure, white dress and finally understood what romance was. He saw the shoes were a bit too big, but she said she could put some paper inside. Going to the bookstore, it suddenly started to rain. Yi-sun wanted to dance in the rain with Hai Tang. She was concerned about her newly bought dress, but he remembered she still had 2 more outfits. In that moment, he just wanted to play freely with her. The few peaceful moments were enough to heal their 2 wounded souls. The next day, the billiard hall reopened. Cha Dong invited major shareholders to cut the ribbon. They lit firecrackers, hoping for a bright future. In the evening, Old Bao came to congratulate him on the opening. He criticized Cha Dong for not informing him beforehand, so he could prepare a flower basket. Cha Dong told Bao not to bother, as he was only running a small business. Old Bao ordered his subordinates to guard this place carefully, because he would take the billiard hall. Meanwhile, Hai Tang received a reply letter, but this time it only said, "Let's go to Shiqiao." In 2026, the police took fingerprints at Yunan's house. They discovered that the man claiming to be Yunan's father was actually named Yi-sun. In 1991, he was sentenced to 13 years in prison for intentional homicide. It turned out that in 1991, Yi-sun actually killed someone on a mountainside. He told Hai Tang to go home first, then ran to the police station alone to confess. But Hai Tang didn't abandon Yi-sun. He frantically asserted that the incident had nothing to do with her. During his time in prison, Yi-sun always refused to see Hai Tang. He only sent a letter telling her not to visit him anymore. And Tang, you should go to school instead of visiting me in prison. You must leave my lone town and live your life well. You don't need to feel guilty because this is my own fate. Only by you living your life will it not be in vain. And Sun, I will go back to school because of our promise. Without you, time passes so slowly that I can hear its footsteps. In 1993, Hai Tang walked out of the university entrance exam. Holding her acceptance letter, she flew to meet Yi-sun. But she never expected that in such a short time, the detention center had been demolished. Since she wasn't a direct relative, the police couldn't reveal where the prisoners had been transferred. And Sun, I got into Jiangnan University. Where are you? I've left my lone town, but I still haven't found you after all. In 1996, Hai Tang volunteered at an orphanage in Shui Street. She met Hao, who had just been released from prison not long ago. He reported that Yi-sun had died in prison from serious illness. If she didn't believe it, she could go back to my lone to visit him. Following the address, Hao wrote, Hai Tang indeed arrived before Yi-sun's grave. She blamed Yi-sun for making her live well, but what could she do without him? However, remembering Yi-sun's smile and sacrifices, Hai Tang didn't dare to throw herself into the vast sea, because if she died, no one would remember him anymore. In 2005, Yi-sun was released from prison. He didn't dare to read Hai Tang's letters, so he burned them all. But he couldn't bring himself to do it completely, so he extinguished the flames and read the remaining lines. And Sun, I've fixed the leaking roof. I will fulfill my promise and live well for your sake. I'm waiting for you to come out. Finally, and Hao also waited for his best brother. He told Jinju to watch the dessert shop, as he had some business to attend to. And Hao told Yi-sun to slowly adapt to his new life. After being released from prison, he also married Jinju and had a child who was just 6 years old. Cha Dong had bought a boat and gone out to sea, but there had been no contact from him. And Hao gave Yi-sun Hai Tang's phone number. He said, she visits the cemetery every year. But in Hao, Tang Yi-sun is no longer here. At the cemetery, Yi-sun saw a cake in front of his grave. He quickly chased after her, but couldn't meet Hai Tang. He returned and ate the birthday cake meant for him. So much resentment and heartbreak suddenly surged, but all he could do was cry out to the heavens. At the convenience store, Yi-sun bravely called Hai Tang, but a little boy answered the phone, calling Hai Tang mom. Yi-sun quickly hung up, deciding to go to another city. He remembered Hai Tang once saying she loved going to a place where it snowed to visit Jihong's mother. Yi-sun introduced himself as Jihong's friend from prison. The first time Yunan met Yi-sun, she called him father. Yi-sun felt sorry for the old woman and her granddaughter, so he stayed to cook them a meal. Yunan heard her grandmother say her father drove a truck all the way to the south. She was afraid she wouldn't get to eat her father's cooking tomorrow. Yi-sun saw his friend's mother was old and frail and still had to take care of a small child. He promised to cook for Yunan every day from then on. Yi-sun had no home and no family, so he decided to fulfill his friend's filial duty to the old mother. He became Ji-hong, caring for Yunan and her grandmother. After the grandmother passed away, Yi-sun took Yunan to the snowy city of Beijing. He worked heavy labor at the pier to earn money to raise his daughter. Thanks to Yunan, Yi-sun's life was less lonely. He had a home and provided his daughter with a good education. However, every year on his birthday, Yi-sun would return to the old Milone town. He would hide in a corner to watch and listen to Hai-Tang's confidences. "And son, I will strive to live out both our lives. I will make sure your sacrifices are not in vain. And son, life is long. We will definitely meet again. So you must be happy every day." Year after year, Yi-sun only dared to look at Hai-Tang from afar. Even as they both grew old, they never stopped thinking of each other. Hai-Tang had passed by Yi-sun countless times, but never once recognized him. Yi-sun forever held onto his longing in vain. In 2026, Shun Chung received a reply letter. He read his mother's coded message and affirmed that Hai-Tang from 1991 was his mother. Just then, the Shui Street police called Yunan, reporting that they had investigated and found the imposter of her father. His name was Yi-sun, and he'd served 13 years in prison for manslaughter. After being transferred, he shared a cell with Ji-hong, and they became close like brothers. But Ji-hong fell ill and died, and Yi-sun took on his friend's dying wish, coming to care for Yunan and her grandmother. After receiving her mother's transcript, Shun Chung went to see Ms. Tan Xin. She said that there were many rumors in Milone town that year. Many people thought Yi-sun committed manslaughter because of Hai-Tang. Others thought Yi-sun took the blame for Hai-Tang. But Tan Xin was certain that Yi-sun would never harm Hai-Tang because he once asked her to help Hai-Tang retake the college entrance exam so she could safely leave Milone town. In 1991, Hai-Tang received a reply letter. Shun Chung introduced himself as Hai-Tang's son. "Mother, some very bad things happened in 2026. I want to know how you lived in 1991, and if you knew someone named Yi-sun. If the two of you are close, you must stay away from him, because Yi-sun could bring danger to you." Yi-sun was dissatisfied. Why does the person in the letter say, "I'm dangerous to Hai-Tang"? Moreover, why is Hai-Tang's son surnamed Shun? Hai-Tang was a little confused, because Shun Chung knew the code word she and her mother used to use. The next day, heavy rain caused leaks everywhere in the house. Yi-sun saw Hai-Tang's notebook get wet and blamed himself for not being better off. He had thought all night, certain that something bad was about to happen to him. "And Tang, if one day I put you in danger, you must hide very well. We can be temporarily separated, and then I will find you." Hai-Tang disagreed, wanting to clean up and then write a letter to clarify. The two ran to the market to buy plastic tarps. They passed by the bookstore but didn't see the mailbox anymore. Yi-sun frantically searched everywhere but still couldn't find the red mailbox. The disappearance of the mailbox made Yi-sun even more anxious. He wanted to know whose son Shun Chung was and why he was telling him to stay away from Hai-Tang. "Yi-sun, we won't be separated." Hai-Tang calmed down and agreed to look for the mailbox after the rain stopped. Meanwhile, Cha Dong temporarily closed the billiard hall because he preferred to rest rather than earn money to give to Old Bao. The next day, In Chang saw Cha Dong hanging a closed sign. He immediately sent people to block Zhenju's path and then bothered Hai-Tang's bookstore. The owner had no choice but to pay Hai-Tang her salary, apologizing that he couldn't hire her anymore. Waiting for Yi-sun to return, Hai-Tang asked him, "Did something happen?" She said that this morning, a group of thugs came to the bookstore and caused trouble. Yi-sun wanted to settle the score with him, but Hai-Tang stopped him. He said Old Bao wanted to seize the billiard hall, but Cha Dong no longer wanted to tolerate it. He accepted Old Bao's revenge, but he wouldn't allow him to touch Hai-Tang. She asked him not to fall into Old Bao's trap. If Old Bao dared to act recklessly, she would call the police. "It was hard for you to get on the right path. You absolutely mustn't turn back because of me." At the front of the billiard hall, Old Bao's subordinates waited for Cha Dong to return. And Chang reminded Cha Dong that if he wanted to close the billiard hall, he had to get his boss's approval. Cha Dong thought both sides should yield a step and not push too hard. And Chang remembered that Cha Dong knew Ms. Tan, so he asked him to set him up with his subordinate. Cha Dong warned that anyone who dared to touch Tan Xin would receive no mercy from him. In 2026, and how proactively came to find Yunnan, and how recounted that he had met Yi-sun once before he was released from prison. He asked him how to tell Hai-Tang that he had died of illness. Yi-sun didn't want Hai-Tang to waste her life waiting for a murderer for over 15 years. He asked his friend to erect a gravestone, which made Hai-Tang truly give up. And Hao said Yi-sun was an orphan But Hai Tang had a father named Yi Bo, whom Shin Chung had never heard his mother mention, because he was worse than a beast. Yi Sun helped Hai Tang sever ties with Yi Bo. They thought they had escaped the ordeal and left my lone town together, but they didn't know there was an even greater disaster behind them. In 1991, Old Bao's subordinates continued to bully Jinju and her grandmother. The bookstore owner spoke up and was also beaten within an inch of his life. After hearing the news, Cha Dong immediately came to stop his two subordinates. He questioned, "After harming people, can we even survive? If you die, who will take care of Hai Tang and Jinju?" Cha Dong promised to find Old Bao to give everyone an explanation. Meanwhile, Hai Tang looked at the bookstore, which was a pile of rubble. She apologized for implicating the owner, but she truly didn't understand. What do we do wrong? Hai Tang, the fault lies with this land. The owner said, "I lived honestly enough, but they still destroyed my only livelihood. I have a small child, so I had to hide, but you were young. You must study like crazy to get into university." Meeting Old Bao, Cha Dong knelt down to confess his sins. He was willing to give up the billiard hall, even compensate with some money. Old Bao said this wasn't about money. However, he had a lifeline specifically for Cha Dong. After hearing the story, Yi Sun reminded his boss not to trust Old Bao. He's making us deliver goods, but he's not saying what's inside. And Hao thought they had no choice, as Old Bao had pushed them to the brink. Cha Dong decided to gamble one last time. If they won, they'd live. If they lost, they'd die together. Meeting Hai Tang, Yi Sun's heart was heavy with unspoken words. She remembered they hadn't known each other long, but she had seen his angry face, his hurt face, his happy face, and now this face filled with unspoken thoughts. Yi Sun remembered that when he was little, Annie Fat often told him to study hard, so he could have a stable life when he grew up. But at that time, he felt adult life was so boring. Yet now, all he wanted was a stable life. But why was it so difficult? Hai Tang, I'm afraid of implicating you. If one day I make you unhappy, you must leave me. And Sun, I'm not afraid of unhappiness, because having you is the greatest blessing. If we face difficulties in the future, I just need you by my side. Hai Tang, if you're here, I won't be afraid of anything anymore. Meeting Tan Xin, Cha Dong returned the investment money. He said his luck wasn't good, but he never regretted it, because the years he spent with her in the past made his life bloom for a moment. He was afraid that if he changed to another life, he wouldn't meet her, so she didn't need to forgive him, nor did she need to wait for him anymore. If he had listened to her advice and followed the right path earlier, perhaps they would have accompanied each other longer. I'm sorry, my dear. Tan Xin knew there were some things that couldn't change, and moreover, love alone couldn't always lead to the end. She would forever cherish the most beautiful time in her heart. From now on, they no longer owed each other anything. That night, Cha Dong took his two subordinates to complete the order. Finally, they were responsible for delivering the goods and collecting the money, without knowing what was in the boxes. Cha Dong told his subordinates to disappear immediately if they heard any strange movements. Meanwhile, Hai Tang heard thunder and quickly brought an umbrella to pick up Yi Sun, but Junju said he and Hao had gone to the city. Hai Tang remembered Yi Sun saying he would unload goods at the pier tonight. She guessed they were secretly doing something. Junju remembered that in the afternoon, they drove towards Sihai factory. Meanwhile, Yi Sun discovered water leaking from the cargo box. He smelled a strong odor and quickly pried open the lid of the box. Indeed, there was a person inside, and it was Xiao Qi. Yi Sun saw Xiao Qi was still breathing and immediately called him to wake up. He told Xiao Qi that if he wanted to live, he had to remain silent. Xiao Qi recounted that he was standing at his doorstep when he was suddenly thrown into a sack. They punched and kicked him continuously, causing him to pass out. Just then, Cha Dong entered, questioning why Yi Sun opened the cargo box. Yi Sun thought it was lucky he opened it. Otherwise, they would have kidnapped someone. He wanted to report to the police to expose Old Bao as the mastermind. Cha Dong reminded Yi Sun that they were just transporting goods. He wasn't afraid of going to prison, but he worried Old Bao would clear his name and make things difficult for everyone. Yi Sun suggested releasing Xiao Qi and explaining everything to him. In the meantime, Old Bao heard Xiao Qi's father report to the police. He ordered Chong to immediately deal with the hostage cleanly. After explaining, Yi Sun took Xiao Qi to flee, but Old Bao led his subordinates there and secretly knocked them out from behind. After preparing 10 barrels of gasoline, Old Bao questioned if Cha Dong dared to betray him. Cha Dong promised to pretend he saw nothing. However, Old Bao didn't believe him. To keep Xiao Qi quiet, Cha Dong agreed to help Old Bao eliminate Xiao Qi on the condition that his brothers were released. Yi Sun wouldn't allow his boss to take the blame for Old Bao. Old Bao gave Cha Dong a chance to save Hao because he had to eliminate Yi Sun. Cha Dong hugged Yi Sun, promising to compensate him in the next life. Yi Sun watched his brother cry out, smelling the gasoline, and hated that this life was so cruel to the weak. But Yi-sun had prepared in advance, hiding a razor blade in his mouth. Yet Xiao Qi was incompetent, so scared that he dropped the blade to the ground. At the moment Yi-sun was on the verge of death, Hai Tang's figure rushed in, risking her life to save him. Yi-sun begged Hai Tang to leave, but she didn't want to live alone. Outside, Old Bao showed no mercy to Cha Dong. He took the knife and lighter from Cha Dong's pocket to frame him for kidnapping Xiao Qi. After that, internal strife would lead to brothers fighting among themselves. Old Bao discovered Yi-sun had fled and immediately ordered his subordinates to chase after him. Cha Dong quickly grabbed their legs, giving Yi-sun a chance to call the police. Old Bao angrily ordered Chubby to deal with the person who bullied him. Cha Dong snatched the knife and told him how to risk his life against Old Bao. Finally, the police arrived, but Cha Dong didn't wait. At the police station, Hai Tang urged Xiao Qi to testify for Yi-sun. However, he only cried, demanding his parents take him home. Hai Tang criticized Xiao Qi for being heartless when Yi-sun risked his life to save him. Xiao Qi then turned around and testified that Yi-sun had not kidnapped him. By midnight, Hai Tang still refused to go disinfect her wounds. Just then, Tan Xine arrived and said Yi-sun was fine. Only then did Hai Tang feel relieved. Finally, Hai Tang waited for Yi-sun. He looked at the burn on her hand with both regret and heartache. Yi-sun, let's go home. Due to involvement in kidnapping and fighting, Cha Dong and Hao were imprisoned. Old Bao escaped death but received a life sentence. The billiard hall was leased to someone else, and Zhenju still waited for Hao to return. Meeting Yi-sun, Xiao Qi never forgot that he saved his life. Xiao Qi asked his mother to petition the school, but they refused to readmit Yi-sun. He remembered his mother had just hired a good tutor for him, so he invited Hai Tang to study with him. Returning home, Yi-sun told Hai Tang the good news. He assigned her to focus on studying, while he would work to earn money. But Hai Tang wanted to major in education to get free tuition. She liked the idea of going with him to a place with lots of snow to fulfill their promise. Yi-sun went to the pier to unload goods. As soon as he received his salary, he bought imported biscuits for Hai Tang. He wanted to pick her up and bring her home to taste the biscuits. Hai Tang, for the first time, ate something so delicious. She even wanted to keep the iron box to store things. She wished she still had the mailbox to send a message to Yunnan announcing she was about to leave town. Yi-sun still wondered why Hai Tang's son was named Shun. He saw only Xiao Qi around her. He had to find a mailbox again to ask who Shun Cheng's father was. Hai Tang insisted she had nothing with Xiao Qi, but Yi-sun still asked 1,000 why questions. He pushed the scrap metal to the junkyard. Yi-sun heard a familiar cat meow and finally found the mailbox. He breathed a sigh of relief that he could answer the questions in his heart. Yi-sun dragged it back home to share the good news with Hai Tang. He guessed that the heavy rain earlier had knocked down the mailbox, so people threw it in the junkyard. Hai Tang was afraid it would lose its sanctity if kept at home, so she urged Yi-sun to take it to the bookstore. That night, Yi-sun picked up Hai Tang from her extra study. He felt Xiao Qi was a bit strange, still smiling happily at Hai Tang. She criticized Yi-sun for being petty, but couldn't suppress the resentment in his heart. Hai Tang had no choice but to reveal that Xiao Qi liked Man Yu. Yi-sun chuckled, complimenting them as a good match. Returning to the mailbox, Hai Tang wrote a reply to Shun Cheng. She affirmed that Yi-sun was close to her, and she hoped Shun Cheng would believe him. Yi-sun snatched the letter, asking his father what his name was and if he was good to Hai Tang. Hai Tang suddenly became pensive, wondering if the future could be changed. Yi-sun thought it was a miracle that they could send letters to 2026. He was certain he wouldn't let her child bear the surname Shun. Yi-sun would go with Hai Tang to all the places she wanted. If they got too old to travel, he would sit and watch her every day. Meeting Yi-sun, Xiao Qi's father, Shunda, gave him a large sum of money. He introduced himself as an old friend of Hai Tang's mother, Feng Ying. Years ago, Shunda stole money from the factory during Feng Ying's shift. Just as the security guard arrived, Feng Ying told Shunda to put the money down, then pretended her cousin came to pick her up from work. After Shunda became well off, Feng Ying only accepted 2 cans of malt milk. So he thought Hai Tang's mother definitely didn't take the factory's money to run away with another man. Shunda remembered Feng Ying once asked him to buy 2 tickets but didn't get on the train. He went to look for her, but only found Hai Tang's father had just lost over 1,000 yuan gambling. Yi-sun thanked Mr. Shun, but declined to accept the money. Shunda told his 2 grandchildren that if they encountered any difficulties, they could always come to him. After much thought, Hai Tang suspected her father took the factory's money because Igbo lost 1,000 yuan, which matched the amount lost by the factory. She believed her mother didn't steal, but intended to run away with her. Sure enough, the truth was as Hai Tang guessed. Feng Ying bought 2 train tickets for herself and her daughter. She told her daughter that she would go to Shichiao to buy fish cakes, which was a code between the 2 of them. Hai Tang understood her mother's intention, clutching the paper tightly in her palm. She followed her mother's words and ran to Shichiao Bridge. But Hai Tang waited and never saw her mother. She suspected Yibo was lying and didn't know what had happened to her mother. In 2026, the police finally found Yi-sun. He had collapsed at the cemetery, so the security guard took him to the hospital. They said he visited the cemetery one day every year, but this time he refused to leave. Yunnan went to see her father, but he only left his hat. It turned out Yi-sun returned to the cemetery to continue waiting for Hai Tang. An-sun, a familiar voice, suddenly called out. Hai Tang, as she did every year, walked towards Yi-sun. Yi-sun, let's go home. Hai Tang, let's go home together. Yi-sun wanted to fulfill his promise, to go with Hai Tang to a place with lots of white snow. They would hold hands forever, and no difficulties could separate them. In 1991, Yibo heard that a trading company would build a resort in the deserted Banshan area. He was worried and quickly hired a thug to handle some business for him. At the pier, Yi-sun unexpectedly saw Yibo. He quickly went home to tell Hai Tang that she must be careful when she went out. She urged him to wash his hands quickly to eat dinner. Yi-sun arranged to wait for Hai Tang after school tonight by the mailbox. In 2026, the police recovered another body from the lake under the mountain. Captain Wang called Shun Chung to the police station because the victim was his maternal grandfather. Shun Chung had heard and how talk about Yibo, but he didn't understand why he suddenly appeared next to his mother. It turned out that day, Hai Tang coincidentally met Yibo again. He was picking up trash and even relit a half-smoked cigarette. Yibo recognized Hai Tang, too moved to speak. Hai Tang gave Yibo a pack of cigarettes and asked him where he had been hiding. Yibo said he was just barely surviving, but it was better than being dead. Hai Tang questioned Yibo, "Did you harm my mother?" He remembered Hai Tang accusing him of the same thing years ago. Yibo recounted that day he chased his wife to Shichiao Bridge. He found 2 train tickets and begged his wife not to leave him for another man, but she refused, saying she would rather die than return home. Yibo had no choice but to grant her wish, yet before she died, she showed no regret. Hai Tang said her mother didn't run off with another man, but waited to take her away. Yibo accused the mother and daughter of being devious, ruining his life. He wasn't afraid of Hai Tang reporting him to the police because he would get free food and lodging in prison. Hai Tang was speechless when Yibo showed no remorse. She told Yibo to fasten his seatbelt, and she would take him for a ride. In 1991, Hai Tang was about to go to the mailbox when she coincidentally met Yibo arguing with an old man. Hai Tang chased Yibo to Banshan mountainside and unexpectedly found her mother's favorite hairpin. Meanwhile, Yi-sun didn't see Hai Tang at their meeting spot. He sped off to find her when the mailbox made a rustling sound. Yi-sun suddenly slammed on the brakes because a cat blocked the road ahead. He understood the message and hastily returned to the mailbox. Sure enough, a slip of paper appeared, warning him not to go to Banshan on the evening of November 30th and absolutely not to commit manslaughter. Just then, Xiaoqi arrived, reporting that Hai Tang was chasing after a very scary man. Yi-sun remembered it was indeed October 30th today and frantically asked Xiaoqi to call the police to Banshan. Meanwhile, Hai Tang finally caught up with Yibo. She questioned what he was hiding in the sack. She found her mother's hairpin, suspecting her mother was inside. Yibo made a deal with the thug to deal with one more person. Yi-sun arrived in time to save Hai Tang. The thug stopped Yi-sun, allowing Yibo to deal with Hai Tang. Yi-sun saw Hai Tang in danger and lost control, pointing his knife at the thug. He paused, remembering the warning from the future. The thug took the opportunity to overpower Yi-sun. Just then, Xiaoqi brought the police. Yi-sun crawled towards Hai Tang and hugged her tightly. "Hai Tang, I didn't harm anyone." "Yi-sun, it's all right. Everything is over now." In 2026, Shun Chung knew that if Yi-sun escaped, he might not have existed, but he had no regrets because his mother deserved more happiness. He was also very content to have accompanied you in all this time. Hearing the cat meow, Yunin woke up with a start. She quickly checked her phone contacts and found that her father's contact was gone, and there was no one named Shun Chung. The last reply letter was sent to the future. Finally, the miracle changed Yi-sun's and Hai Tang's painful lives. He no longer had to be a lonely ghost, trapped in memories, and Hai Tang escaped the nightmare that haunted her for half her life. They would bravely move forward, holding hands and facing any difficulties together.